I am your State Legal Redress Chair and a member of the Gary branch of the NAACP. And welcome to our criminal justice uh, uh, workshop or panel. Today I have joining me um, Major Jerry Williams of the Indiana State Police. And I want to give our guest, Mr. Williams, a time to introduce himself and tell about his career in law enforcement with the Indiana State Police.
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you to everyone involved for the invite. I'm grateful and humbled by it. I will tell you in short, I've been doing law enforcement now for about 34 years or so. Actually started out as a correction officer with the Lake County Sheriff Department, and prior to going out on the road as an officer with the Sheriff Department there, I left and went off to the State Police Academy. So, and I've been there just shy of 29 years. Currently, I hold the rank of major. I am the highest ranking minority or black or brown troop on our agency, and the highest ranking minority by way of position. My actual position is Assistant Chief of Staff of Logistics. So I'm responsible and my team for pretty much everything logistics, all the real estate in the state of Indiana, to cars, helicopters, all the guns, uniforms, that type of good stuff. So we kind of manage that stuff from a day-to-day basis. Just shy of about $300 million in daily assets. So they're quite busy just to keep up with all the facilities and resources that we have to keep within our operations. Um, I actually started out and born and raised there in Gary, which is still what I call home, and was the district commander there for the Lowell Post, which encompasses the Gary area as well, to 7 counties to include Lake County, for about 4 years before going down and being invited to join the executive staff down in Indianapolis. So that's where I rested now for about the last just shy of 9 years now. So within that those spans.
Thank you very much, Major Williams. And for those of you who do not know me, again, my name is Attorney James Dillon, and I have a law enforcement background as well. I started, just like Major Williams, as a correctional officer with the Lake County Sheriff's Department in Crown Point, Indiana. From there, I became a Gary police officer. And after becoming a Gary police officer, I served as a police officer at Valparaiso University Police Department, where I was a lieutenant when I left to be a deputy prosecutor for the Lake County Prosecutor's Office. And now I'm a private attorney. So the focus of today's discussion is going to be on criminal justice reform. And specifically, we want to talk about, have we reformed it enough? So we've reformed criminal justice and we've reformed juvenile justice. And have we reformed it enough? Currently, there are two bills that have recently been suggested. One is House Bill 1006. I believe it was suggested in the last House. I think it passed. Law enforcement reform, which says law enforcement officers requires the state of Indiana to establish a training board for mandatory training and de-escalation as a part of the use of force curriculum, and requires de-escalation training to be provided as part of the pre-basic training. And the pre-basic is what officers get before they go to the academy, or reserve officers or other volunteer officers get. Mandatory for in-service training, and the executive training program. It establishes procedures to allow the Indiana Law Enforcement Training Board to directly decertify any officer who has committed misconduct. And it defines chokeholds and prohibits the use of chokeholds under certain circumstances. It also makes it a Class A misdemeanor. Specifies that a law enforcement officer who turns off their body camera to conceal a criminal act, it makes that turning it off a Class A misdemeanor. So let's start there. So first of all, Major, I want to give you time to just talk about recent reforms in policing. You've been in policing now for 34 years, you stated, and talk about the recent reforms in policing that you've seen, especially in light of the last 2 years of protest and things of that nature and the events that we've seen nationally, and then maybe respond to the law enforcement reform that I believe the governor did spearhead last session.
Well, in general, I will tell you that all of the efforts that I've followed thus far, as far as the reform that is currently either been approved or legislation that is still currently being evaluated for to pass and form some form of a bill, I would tell you I don't see any issues with it. If anything, I see it that it is an opportunity to support um, our communities with some transparency and some accountability, to be quite honest with you. So I don't see that there's any opportunity for an adverse effect on us and law enforcement. It may require us to rethink how we do business, all the way to including taking those proactive steps to create that assurances with our communities that we we have a level of integrity and accountability that we are not afraid to be held accountable for our acts and actions. So, for example, with us, of course, under Governor Holcomb, we just initiated using our own agency as an example. We have just started our own body worn camera program, and with a clean piece of paper, if I can use that as a analogy, we were given an opportunity to not only look at the body worn program itself as it was being used and implemented throughout the country, but to also think of it in other ways to be as thorough in this process and these efforts as possible. Thus, we not only did body cameras in our process, we also did in-car cameras and increased those that equipment as well, et cetera, just to kind of get us to that same level of accountability that this whole reform process and conversations is really driven to address.
Yeah, no, that's I uh, I agree. We're going to have some other panelists coming on. We have Chief Dombrowski. Looks like he is logged in, and also Senator Randolph looks like he's attempting to log in. And I'll give those gentlemen a chance to introduce themselves. But it sounds like, Major, it sounds like you think that the reforms that were just instituted are good reforms, and that do you think they go far enough?
I think that, well, I will tell you that what has been put in place right now absolutely helps. And there's nothing that hurts there. Um, I'd be remiss to say that there's never an opportunity to continue to evaluate this process to see what success is and the what it brings to this process as far as accountability and transparency when it comes to law enforcement in our communities. I think it needs to constantly be evaluated, meaning that we shouldn't stop here. We should be constantly having these conversations to see if enough is ever going to be enough. We should always be looking for opportunities to improve in how we treat people and how we hold ourselves accountable within our communities.
We said we have with us also Senator Lonnie Randolph of East Chicago, and Chief Dombrowski, the former chief of Lafayette Police Department. Looks like Senator Randolph is still connecting to audio. Is Chief Dombrowski, if he can come on and give a brief introduction of himself, and he can be introduced to our viewers at the state convention. I thought he was there. No, Senator Randolph, we can't quite hear you. So we can't quite hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Okay, Senator Randolph, if you could give an introduction, give an introduction to our state convention, and then give maybe a brief synopsis of the criminal justice and the juvenile justice reforms that are going on and that have recently taken place down in the State House.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall from memory and everything. This is my name is Lonnie Randolph. I'm currently a state senator, 2nd District. The second district, the current second district includes East Chicago, parts of Gary, parts of Hammond, Griffith, Maryville, and the new, well, that's what the current district, it's going to change the first of the year and everything. And this is my third term, second time around as a state senator, but my third term and my second time around and everything. The bills, and I can't recall the numbers of the bill, but it was a couple bills. One bill, I think it was 1006, that was the Black Caucus bill that we were pushing. And it dealt a number of things. The most important thing it had was terms of focusing on issues that affect African Americans, particularly in the criminal justice system. They had to training for more police officers, more money for that. Also dealt with chokehold as well. It also dealt with whistleblower in terms of situation like a police officer has a camera and there's an incident, he turns the camera off. That could very well end up being a charge as a Class A misdemeanor against him. Also dealt with record keeping. You know how sometimes police officers leave one department, go to another department, and they got a bad record. Well, this allows a new police department to get their record from the previous police department. And then, because in the past, it's always been confidential. So by revealing that, that lets you know whether or not you're hiring a good or bad police officer. Those are the basic fundamental areas that particular bill provided for. The other bill we had for is the juvenile justice bill, whereby if in fact a juvenile has a record, then at a certain period of time when he finishes term and he becomes an adult, he can get automatic expungement. He can expunge his records and everything. Also, the bill also required that the juvenile has to be separate from if he's locked up, incarcerated, and can't be released to his parents. He cannot be incarcerated with any adults. It prevents that from happening. And there's a couple other things that it did as well, which I can't recall. In terms of expungement was the main thing. Two is being locked up with an adult and everything. And there's a couple other areas which I can't recall at this point in time, but my memory will be refreshed if somebody asks me a particular question.
Thank you, Senator Randolph. And I do have a synopsis of the bill, which is Senate Bill 368, and it does provide for automatic expungements for certain juvenile offenses. It prohibits juvenile arrestees who meet certain requirements from being housed with adult inmates prior to trial, with exceptions. It establishes a procedure for determining juvenile competency, and it provides that after juvenile court has determined that a child is a dual status child, the juvenile court may refer the child to be assessed by a dual status assessment team under certain circumstances.
Do you also have 1006 right there, synopsis?
I do. I read it earlier. I can read it again. And House Bill 1006, the synopsis is that law enforcement officers would be required by the state of Indiana requires the Indiana Law Enforcement Training Board to establish mandatory training in de-escalation as part of the use of force curriculum, and requires de-escalation training to be provided as part of 1, the pre-basic training program, 2, mandatory in-service training, and 3, the executive training program. It establishes a procedure to allow the Indiana Law Enforcement Training Board to decertify any officer who has committed misconduct. It defines a chokehold and prohibits the use of chokeholds under certain circumstances. It specifies that the law enforcement officers who turned off a body-worn camera with the intent to conceal a criminal act commits a Class A misdemeanor, and it requires an agency hiring a law enforcement officer to request an officer's employment record and certain other information from previous employing agencies, and it requires the previous employing agency to provide certain employment information upon request, and provides immunity for disclosure of the employment records. So that is exactly what it does. Just what you said. So Senator Randolph, do you think, so first, I do know there was some police reforms that were enacted by the governor through 2020. Tell me, do you think, I'm not sure if these bills were passed. I thought the House bill may have been. What's the status of these bills? And then 2, with the reforms that Governor Holcomb did put into place, and I know he committed to the NAACP that he would see about making sure ISP hired more, Black and brown officers as well. Do you think they go far enough?
No, they don't. Yeah, both bills passed. Right? They passed the Senate as well as the House. One of them originated in the House and everything, and the other one originated in the Senate. The bill dealing with juveniles originated in the Senate. That was Senator Karen Talliam was the main sponsor of that, and we all were sponsors of it, but she was the main driving force for that. And in the House, Representative Robin Shackelford was a main driving force for Senate Bill, well, House Bill 1006. That's the one deal with police reform and everything. They didn't go far enough because it eliminates chokeholds in certain situations. We want to eliminate chokeholds completely, period. But they didn't. But it's a start, and we accepted that. We did not get anything specifically in the bill concerning the percentage of minority hiring in proportion to the total workforce. We didn't get that. But we've got a focus on the training aspect of it because there's some additional dollars that's going to be released toward the training or the retraining of police officers concerning how to handle minorities when it comes to arrest situations and everything. So that's absent out of the bill. However, it's a start. So we got to start somewhere. Indiana, you have to keep in mind, Indiana is a very conservative state, mostly Republicans. And they've got this big camera view in terms of how they think the law should work. And that excludes mostly in the past, the interests of African Americans. So we're trying to educate them in terms of including African Americans when they start talking about the need things and requirements of the police department and Indiana State Police Department particularly.
Okay. Now, and it's Ms. Scott, is Chief Dombowski with you, or is he going to join us?
He should be joining us. I just sent him a text, so he should be joining us very soon.
Okay, absolutely. And I do see our state convention president, our state conference president, rather, Attorney Barbara Boland Williams has stepped on. We just want to recognize her if she wanted to say anything.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that this panel's convening. This is such a critical topic, and it is important that we look at what occurred, at least from my perspective, what occurred in the State House with respect to the passage of these two bills as only the beginning. And I really believe that we haven't gone far enough. And I'm so grateful also that Major Williams is also on this panel, because he's directly, in the fight. And it's important that we have people of good conscience on both sides of the question, because we want to balance things out. It's been out of balance for a long time, and it's important that we start to balance the equation. Whatever is out of line on one side needs to be brought into line, and whatever's out of line on the other side needs to also be brought into the line. So I'm glad that you're all here. We certainly have a learned panel, and I'm so glad that Ms. Sadie Harper Scott is involved, because that has kind of been her mission with respect to bridging the communication gap between community and police. And she, to my knowledge, held the first body-worn camera workshop in the state several years ago, which gave us an opportunity to really start to tune in on what the advantage could be with respect to officers having cameras on, that they're wearing them both for the citizens and also for the law enforcement personnel. So great opportunity for us to have this dialogue and for our delegates to be a part of it. So thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Dillon, for serving as the moderator for this.
Now, Ms. Sadie Brown Scott, if you could tell us about your workshop and about the issue of body-worn cameras. I will just preface this by saying I was a part of, in Porter County, the first department that started body cameras. There were some car cameras, but the university was the first in Porter County to start body cameras. And some of the other agencies This is years ago now. We're not happy with that, but I know things have changed. So if you could tell us about your research and what you found and what you've been working on.
Yes, we had a young man who had been arrested, and several questions rose to the level of me wanting to reach out to law enforcement to have that conversation about body cameras. Are they wearing them? Are they not wearing them? Or what are they doing? What show are they? So what I did, I reached out to my chief, Jason Dunkowski, who was the first chief to go to the State House in Indianapolis to testify in regards to the body cameras. So our West Lafayette chief of police department and was one of the ones who actually was doing an amazing job, but I wanted to go further. So what I did was contacted another body camera guy to come in and just give us an idea of what a body camera looked like. I had the opportunity to go to Lafayette, down to the police department there, where we do have a lot of concerns here in this community, and to just go into the body camera room. I wanted to see what it really looked like. So certainly with me having those thoughts and those interests, I wanted to explore an avenue to bring a body camera specialist to our community. It was amazing. So some of the things that we saw in the capturing with the body camera and having to talk to Mr. Jerry Williams, the highest ranking state trooper for the state of Indiana. I wanted to kind of get a little bit of an experience what they deal with when they have it and when they are dealing with those people of all races, particular color, you know, what it looks like when that is in process and in progress. So those questions was on my mind. So I wanted to make sure we brought the team to the table to figure out where do we go from here. So certainly that's what made me reach across the state of Indiana to bring folk in, because there are a lot of concerns. There are a lot of concerns we need to be addressed. What do we as NAACP representatives say to the community to help better our community as far as it comes with policing? So it was very wonderful. I wanted to make sure that we know that training was one. I also attended they have a citizen academy that you can, it's like a 7 weeks class. I attended that where I was able to get in the car and find out what it looks like, you know, the body cameras and everything. I think it's really important that we look into that, and mainly to assure that our communities, that what's being looked at when we have questions about body camera, and if we are protected, both the police and the citizens are protected when it comes to the body cameras.
Now, Major Williams, I want to have you respond, because I know you have to go soon. You have another engagement, but I want you to respond. I want you to respond to two things. One, I want you to respond to how the body camera and the more camera rollout. You described it as not just body cameras, but also vehicle mounted cameras. How that is going on your department. I imagine if it's not the largest department in the state, it's the second largest department in the state, and it covers the most ground in the state, clearly. And in addition to that, I know a few years ago at the announcement of the state diversity officer, when the governor was making that announcement, he met with NAACP leaders, and I was one of those. And he said that he was going to institute some things to attempt to make sure that there was more minority representation in ISP. Can you tell me what's going on there, and what's ISP doing to recruit? I know locally, Jerry Zell, every time there's an opening, he sends it out to everybody who he thinks would be qualified. But what's ISP doing to try to increase its representation of minorities?
So if I could start with the body camera question first. So we have probably roughly about 90 days of full implementation of our body camera program, which includes not only the body camera itself, but we also took what we felt the necessary steps to include the in-car camera system as well too, which also has a dual camera purpose that also puts a camera on any subjects or any individuals that we have sitting in the car with us as well too, to capture those individuals, their pictures, their voice, etc. So again, trying to cover all of those bases, and we right now probably have roughly about 750, just shy of 800 body cameras and in-car cameras installed and out in operation. I will tell you that I have not seen or heard anyone from our agency, and I'm sure they exist, and maybe just because of my rank and position, I probably won't get as much of the negative feedback from some of the rank and file. But I will tell you that genuinely, majority of the officers seem to welcome this whole body camera program. The officers are seeing it as a way to be able to demonstrate that they are treating people right. They are treating people with the level of dignity and integrity that they should be, whether they're on camera or off camera. So I found that to be pretty remarkable. That coming from a fairly non-diverse agency, of course, our Black and Brown troops make up a very small percentage of our agency. And the fact that we cover so much rural ground here was still refreshing to hear that nobody seemed to overwhelmingly have any opposition for the whole camera program. I've seen it work on both sides of the table, from a community aspect as well as on the law enforcement side of the table, where officers were accused of violating a person's rights, and yet the video and the audio combined depicted a totally different scenario. And then adversely, I've seen abroad where that camera validates a person's complaint and how they were treated, particularly in our Black and Brown community, which is, of course, personal to me itself. So I'm thinking in that respect, I see a lot of positiveness coming from it. We probably have captured just shy of, in just the 90 days, of course, we span across the state, just shy of 300,000 audio and video clips that have already been stored in our system, which was one of our challenges financially, is making sure that we could support the back end of this program so that we could meet all the requirements and any statutory requirements, et cetera, for storing that data and keeping up with that material. So that part of the process for us has been going extremely well, and with very little hiccups as far as the functionality of the system, et cetera. So it's been actually going well. All of our Black and Brown officers, of course, they're the biggest cheerleaders of this program, because again, we all have our own personal invested interest in making sure that our Black and Brown communities, when officers are out there dealing with people, that you're treating those people with the same level of dignity, whether they're Black, brown, or green or purple in that respect.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Dillon.
Absolutely, Senator.
Yeah, in terms of Officer Williams, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In terms of how, I think you mentioned that you thought that majority of the officers have accepted the training aspect of it in a positive manner. I mean, was there like a survey or something taken concerning the officers, concerning how they feel about this retraining, the training aspect of the bill?
So Senator, what I took the opportunity to do, knowing that I'd be speaking on this topic today, was to reach out to all of the different commanders, and then I had my staff, which includes several Black and Brown troopers as well, basically just on the fly stop and ask the troopers in general what their gut feeling was about the camera programs, the training that they received to know how to properly use the camera, to include the policies and procedures that we put in place on the functionality of the cameras, when they can turn those cameras off, how those cameras will automatically come on, et cetera. And nobody just really seemed to have any negative feedback on the camera program itself. So no formal survey, but just informally, I just have not heard any.
How about the training aspect? There's part of the bill that deals with retraining of the officers concerning minorities, African Americans, particularly when it comes to the wrestling part. I think we put aside $170 million for the training aspect of it, give or take a couple million, everything. How has the force taken to being retrained all over, particularly when it comes to stops and arrests in terms of minorities and everything? What's the attitude or the feel for that concerning your officers?
I would, so that I don't speak too much out of school as far as the training program itself, because that's a different lane for me. But I can tell you, sitting on that executive staff, what I have seen is they have actively reevaluated and what I like to call reimagine how they do their training program. I've seen things come back that was in place 29 years ago when I came on, which was more in line with de-escalation and techniques to help de-escalate situations so that they don't get to a hands-on confrontation with people that we can otherwise avoid and things of that nature. So I do know that those types of training modules have been implemented, and that is currently being done not only within the recruit academy. I witnessed and participated in some of that same such training and rethinking of from a de-escalation platform, how to address matters without them escalating to force being necessary.
Has been any discussions, preliminary discussion concerning the preliminary preparation for the training that's going to be starting the first of the year? I'm assuming the training will start the first of the year, not just with the cameras, but also in terms of retraining concerning the stops and traffic traffic situations, those kind of things. Has there been any preliminary things done at this point in time? Because I know it's going to take some period of time to implement everything. So I'm assuming we're in November right now. December is another year. Suppose everything takes effect. Well, actually, it's already taken effect because the bill has been passed. So are you aware of any specific policies that's been implemented by the, who's it, Commissioner of State Police concerning training of the officers for the state?
Or are you referring probably to because we have actually already proactively began to take those necessary measures to address those training components already internally with the state police. Now, what I cannot speak to or for certain is what levels of this implementation has taken place with the ILEA, the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, which encompasses that much broader spectrum of officers from the local and county agencies.
Has there been any policy or discussions made concerning much more diversifying the Indiana State Police Department in terms of more minorities have an opportunity to become state police officers? Because right now the employments, the field is not very good when it comes to minorities. And part of our objective the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus was for much more diversification of the police force with many more minorities given an opportunity to be state police officers. Has there been any policies implemented right now to reach that objective? And is there a goal or something? I don't know. I guess I'm asking in a roundabout way without knowing the specifics, but I think you know what my concern is at this point in time.
I do, Senator, and I know exactly in what vein you're referring to. What I would tell you is that I know that actively Superintendent Carter has created a position very similar to the office. I know I'm going to tear this name up, but an office of inclusion and diversity officer, similar to the same concept that the governor's office has also put into place. That individual is Ruben Marte. He's African-American gentleman within our agency that has been tasked with heading that process. And his scope of responsibilities include everything to include recruiting, evaluating our recruiting process and efforts within our agency, to include mentoring programs and upward mobility within our agency to get minorities moving up through our change to get people into these policy making roles, et cetera. We and Jerry Williams will tell you that I will make no excuses for the fact that I'm the highest ranking minority on our agency. I believe that we can do better. And I've heard nothing less from Superintendent Carter to that vein as well, of understanding and accepting that, hey, we got to find ways to do better to not only get more Black and brown people on this agency to better reflect our communities that they serve, but to also create the upward mobility to help foster that process all the way up through our agency itself.
Yeah. The most important aspect of that,
I got
make one last
Go ahead,
But
sir.
the most important aspect of that is not just outside input from minorities, that's prior professionals who've had the experience, but also from the inside. I would think that they would contact you directly and get your opinion concerning how they should go about diversifying the force. And I'm hoping that they do that. I'm through. I'm through.
Yeah, I have even when they don't act, Senator, I will tell you that my personality is I don't have any qualms with interjecting myself, and nobody's told me otherwise. But we are actively working on that. Myself, Captain Ruben Marte, who is now our office, who handles this office of diversity and inclusion, are actively working, for example, with a robust and very detailed implicit bias training program for our agency, to couple that with the diversity training program that he and another major, Todd Smith, currently puts on a school for that not only across our agency, but other agencies within the state and outside of the state, and other state agencies as well. So I am actively taking a role because I take personal pride in where I'm at right now. I stand on the shoulders of quite a few people that started off with folks like yourself, Senator, that brought about the first African American on the state police back in 1962. So it's not lost on me the level of responsibility that I take dearly and hold dearly, that level of responsibility as it comes to trying to find ways to have those uncomfortable conversations with our staff and with other agencies alike about our perception, our perspective as Black and Brown people within this agency and within this community. This is personal to me for many different reasons. I have 11 grandkids, and 6 of them, I'm sorry, are young boys, and they're teenagers that I have the same fears that everybody else do when they are approached by law enforcement and how they conduct themselves and making sure that they get treated right with that process. 3 of my 4 sons are both in law enforcement. 2 of them are troopers down in Indianapolis. My one son used to be one of the full-time recruiters, and I watched how aggressively that young man, and I don't say this because he's one of my sons, but I say this because I watched how he aggressively went across the state, and he was from every stretch of this scope as far as the state of Indiana, reaching out to different communities, trying to find eligible Black and Brown folks to take part in this agency as a career.
Well, I hope you don't mind me, but you make me proud.
Senator, I appreciate you. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Williams. I know Major Williams says he has to hop off shortly, but he's welcome to stay the next 15 minutes if he just told me he had to hop off early. But Senator Randolph, I do have a question for you. In the light of the bills that were passed, the enforcement normally the enforcement will likely fall on the county's chief law enforcement officer, which is the prosecutor. We see this down in Georgia with the Ahmaud Arbery case, where the prosecutor saw something that was wrong and decided not to do it. Oftentimes, the prosecutors and the police departments have great working relationships because they bring cases together all the time.
Yeah.
Is there something else that the state can do to make sure that this law, especially the evidence wiping part of it, which makes it a crime to wipe the evidence, is there something more that the state could do to make sure that's enforced?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot more they can do. The obvious thing that we were pushing for is the reporting aspect of it. And there's a tentative reporting thing now that's federalized, but we wanted to bring that to the state basis, where there has to be, whenever you have an incident, particular traffic incident that deals with minorities, there should be a report made. And there should be a report made concerning the prosecutor from the respective county concerning how many of those that stop once they get the records from the police department, how many of those were prosecuted, and so what was the racial makeup of that. And so reporting starts first. And so I think there's going to be some legislation that's going to be proposed in the next session coming up in January concerning the reporting aspect, and trying to refine that so that we can get accountability, not just from the police department, but also from the county prosecutors in the state of Indiana. And so that's an issue. And I think that'll go a long ways toward the question that you had just raised, that in terms of that kind of concern and everything. And so I don't know, this thing, you get, I don't, you just get so emotional, you get upset in terms of when you see some of these things happening. And then you see lip service given to various counties. And then you don't see any actions, any content. So hopefully these bills will force that to come about and everything. And we're hoping that the governor will take another step toward supposedly his equalization, diversity, his fairness bill in the next session by supporting whatever legislation we come up with concerning this reporting aspect of it to make people accountable, including the county prosecutors in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, what's the enforcement plans? It sounds like looking at the bill that passed on the juvenile justice reform, it really sounds like that would fall on I know there's the JDAI, but it would really fall on the judges to over the juvenile courts to make sure that these services are being offered and that the children aren't being housed with adults. Is that the case, Senator?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to be another aspect of the reporting part in terms of accountability. Make the county, the judges respective, accountable in terms of making sure that these things occur in the juvenile court. And one of the avenues that I feel is that when it comes to juvenile courts, I think we're referring to the juvenile court bill we have, I'd like to see the bench in terms of juvenile judges be diversified. To give an example, in Lake County, we have a juvenile court judge, okay? But he's got about 78 magistrates. And then the entire time that he's been there, he hasn't hired not one African-American as a magistrate, okay? These are the people that make the decisions on the lives of kids that come before them. But yet over 70% of the cases that come before the juvenile court are minorities, either African-Americans or Hispanic. Same thing in St. Joe County. In St. Joe County, you've got a probate judge who has jurisdiction over chins, neglect, juvenile cases. He has 3 magistrates, okay? Majority of the cases that appear in front of the probate judge there in St. Joe County, which includes South Bend, are 6% minority. But yet you got 3 magistrates that hear those cases, not one of them are minorities at all, not one African-American. And I've been pushing for that. So those are 2 examples that 2 counties I can give particular examples of because I've experienced in both of those counties. But I'm told the same situation exists in Tippecanoe County, which includes Lafayette, as well as Vandenberg County, which includes Evansville, and same thing with Fort Wayne. And so we got an issue concerning diversifying their bench to have someone who can relate to some of these kids and these families that appear in front of them, everything.
Yeah. Now, Miss Harper Scott, I know you have a great, and I know your chief before I know he's retired, but he's come to speak to our state conference before, and I know that you guys have a great relationship between the community and your police department. Tell me, how do you think that's going to affect the enforcement of this training and the enforcement of that? Do you think that relationship, and does that relationship continue under the new chief?
Let me tell you, it doesn't, yeah, it does continue. I had the new chief that we have here. Ned is an amazing chief. Yes, all of my chief doesn't have a problem. They cannot do it any other way because we are the ones who support them. They support us and we hold them accountable. So certainly we do not have that problem. We do not have that issue. Major Jerry Williams and the chief police department here, Indiana State, here off in 43, are often calling out because they want to get our young men of color to the table. So that's amazing for me. I am truly blessed that I have the 3 police department, Purdue University, all of those that reach out because we're looking for Black and brown young men and women to take that position. But certainly I have that good connection with all of my police chiefs. Matter of fact, I have that good connection with my judges. In about a month or so, we're calling a meeting with all our judges because there are judges that are here that want to see people of color that serve on the bench as well. You know, my newly appointed judge just said to me a few weeks ago, we want to see, I don't know how I would feel in a courtroom and all people are white and the only Black sitting there being incarcerated and being punished. We want to see that different. Just a few weeks ago, we had Veterans Court, which I didn't realize we had it here. Two of the younger judges called, wanted me to come and attend. Young man veteran had some problems with driving and drinking and got in some trouble. He took this training and in a program for a year and a half. They wanted me to be present because the young man stated he was going to be the first Black to complete that program. He did that. I thought that was amazing for them to reach out. And when I went in the courtroom, I gathered some folk to go in there with me because they know, and I want to see that more people of color are represented as lawyers. The prosecutors just reached out to me, and I know you're an attorney. I welcome you to come on to Lafayette so you can get in that prosecution room. But certainly they are reaching out to people and wanting attorneys. There is a lack of those, but certainly if there is we need them, and we need people of color. We certainly do need that. And I come from North Carolina, where in my community, we always had the deacons in the church, men and women, that actually set out to help assist with our young people, to get them ready to enter the world of works. So we need to get back to that. We're shy with that.
That's good. All right. We are fastly approaching the end of our hour. We have about 4 minutes left. I know, Senator Randolph, I feel like we've heard so much from you, but I'm going to say, if you could give us a final word on juvenile justice and criminal justice reform in the state of Indiana, and where we're going in the future on that, and the steps we have to take to ensure that we get meaningful reforms that help our people.
You're talking about a couple of subjects, Attorney Dillon, Mr. Dillon, about it. That
Senator, can I
Oh, Mr.
just
Williams,
say something to you? I'm
Major-
sorry. I just wanted to say to the senator, to Ms. Barber, to Ms. Sadie, and to you yourself, Mr. Dillon and Senator. Let me just say this before I jump, and I apologize for jumping early. But when I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it warms my heart to participate in such a function with you folks, and what you represent, and how much you impact us in law enforcement, particularly us for the state police. Senator Randolph, you know, I know you know very personally what we are managing through with the Indiana State Police, and I'd be remiss not to just take a quick second to tell you, from all of us to all of you, thank you, and thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like I said, you do me proud. I tell you that.
Thank you, sir. You guys take care. Be safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Major.
Yeah, and I think I know that we're running out of time, but I think we need more people just to come visit me in Lafayette so that they can hear what we're talking about. I'll be happy to service you. I'll be happy to feed you. I'll be happy to do any of that. And Mr. Dillon, I'll be happy to invite you all to come where at an evening, our judges, our police officers and all of that, because we all need each other.
Well, I've talked with your county prosecutor on several occasions. We talked about diversification and all that. And he's saying he's looking for some people, so attorneys, to hire on his staff. Yeah. I'd like to see a much more diversified police department. I think you've only had 2 or 3 Black police officers. And so I asked if he can work with the community, including the police, in terms of diversifying not just his own staff, but other staffs as well. And when you talk to him, let him know you talk with me.
I will definitely do that. I'll let him know you promised to come here with me, but you haven't gotten here yet. But I'll let him know after today you'll be coming.
Okay. And you're going to pay the first filer fee.
I will do that. I'm going to pay the first filer fee. I have my check right here. I will do that. I know that Major Williams does an amazing job. He has some young folk that were training and teaching our young folk how to be young folk. So I'm amazed at what we can do as a team. So Lafayette waits to host you at any time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we've had a good hour. It's so much to get into in an hour. I'm saddened that Chief Dombowski could not join us. But Ms. Harper Scott was a great fill-in. She knows what's going on in her community. Thank you, Senator Randolph. Me and Senator Randolph, it seems like we talk about these issues every week.
Yeah, and everything. And we're trying, the Black Caucus is a caucus. We're trying to get the authorities a little bit more sensitized when it comes to particularly minorities, particularly minors. Okay, because minors, when once you get a bad track record, we don't want to start that old thing where, from the cradle to the jail. We don't want that. We want to break that up and everything. And one of the avenues we'll do is more sensitizing in terms of police department when it comes to African American minorities. Okay, so that's our goal right there. Even though the thought process of the majority, meaning white folks, concerning minors, is not exactly on the same trail. They'll say, yeah, we want to be sensitized, but they've got to understand the culture of minorities, especially when it comes to minors, and before they make drastic decisions concerning how they treat them. And I think that'll go a long ways toward, well, it's a long range process is what it is. It's not going to happen overnight. So, but we do the best we can. That's all I can say. We do the best we can.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining me, Senator Randolph. I want to, of course, thank Major Williams again. I think he brought a lot of information to the table of what's going on with our state police department, our Indiana State Troopers, and I'm happy to see that he's involved in the changes that are rolling out there. As always, want to thank our conference president, Attorney Barbara Boland-Williams, for asking me to do this panel and to moderate this panel, and for all of our panelists. And that is our time. I believe this may be the last panel of our convention, but if not, you guys stay tuned for the next panel in the convention. And thank you guys for watching.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you, everybody.
See you, Sadie. Take care, okay?
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.